friends, welcome again in Pharma-info with Shivashish. Today I have brought a topic that is mechanism of action of sulfonamides. So what is the mechanism? If you have gone through my last video that is on chemistry and SAR of sulfonamides, you might have studied or you might have learned that what are the basic requirements in making sulfonamides to be considered as a potential bacteriostatic agent. Okay. Now let us just see that though we have come across with the various modifications which are involved in making sulfonamides, but still we are not aware with the fact that how with those entities sulfonamides will become an eligible candidate for, or rather eligible candidate to treat bacterial infection, right? Okay, let us just straightway get into the mainstream, that is mechanism of action of sulfonamides. Okay, now how exactly they are exerting their action? Okay, for that we need to study a biochemical pathway. Sometimes we can also call it as sulfonamide as an bacteriostatic, and at the same time we are also calling it as antimetabolite too. And before knowing that how it is acting as an antimetabolite, let us just define antimetabolite. Somebody has put it very nicely. Antimetabolites are those which are basically interfering the process of DNA formation. Now we all know that a sequential pathways are there. That means a series of reactions has to be conducted so that the DNA will get formed. It's not simply collecting the raw materials like adenine, guanine, thymine and cytosine, okay, place them all together and make the double helix and all, beta sheets and all, bring those bends, loops and all, so that we can develop the DNA. Okay, but the thing is that from where your system is providing, from where your system is procuring the raw materials, that means the nitrogenous base, okay, that need to be considered. Now while getting into that particular section, there we came to know that what all the nitrogenous base that are involved in making the DNA, okay, they are also being developed out of. So what I told that the nitrogenous base, that means one of the essential building blocks or one of the most sought after building blocks which are required in making the DNA. Now we need to find out from where this nitrogenous base are evolved. Now while dealing with this particular pathway, we can readily unfold the mechanism by which sulfonamides are exerting their action. Okay, let me just take you to that particular word, right? Okay, so that means we are concerned about what? The various biochemical pathways, okay? Definitely we are not going to going in details of each and every biochemical pathways, right? Only thing is that we'll just present an overlay of those biochemical pathways which basically dealt with the production of nitrogenous base, right? Okay, chalo. So let us just deal with the biochemical pathway. Okay, now what they found that in order to make the essential purines and pyrimidines, one of the essential components are found to be folic acid, right? Okay, it is not the simply folic acid. Now let us just deal with whether the folic acid is found to be the ideal form with which a nitrogenous base is generated. It's not like that. It is the folic acid in its particular form, okay, can be given or can assist what the process of making either purines or pyrimidines. Okay, now let us see that which is that form of folic acid responsible for, or rather which is that form which is being required by your system so that they can make the nitrogenous base such as purines and pyrimidines, right? Okay, now it is the folic acid in their N5, N10, either pyrimidine or purine form. Okay, this is the form which is required for making the nitrogenous base such as pyrimidines or purines, right? Because it is in the process of making pyrimidines or purines. Suppose let us just take pyridines, right? Pyrimidines. So what is the pyrimidines? We have with us, suppose cytosine, we have with us thymidine. Now you might have noticed that thymidine looks like this, or rather the precursor of thymidine was found to be an uracil. So this is the structure of uracil, right? Okay, if we can remember, this is the structure of uracil. It is the methylation of uracil okay, that eventually transform uracil into thymidine. Now let us just see that where from this methyl is coming. It is the methyl that is being provided or contributed by this form of folic acid. Now let us just look back. So here also, okay, with this information, then also we are unable to figure out how these sulfonamides are exerting their action. Okay, now that means probably the answer lies within the folic acid making. It's not the making of nitrogenous base. Rather, the answer may lie within the making of folic acid. Okay, that means we need to figure out how this folic acid is developed in your system. Or rather, we all know that human system is not capable of making folic acid, and that is why human system always requires folic acid. A certain level of folic acid is required, and that we are outsourcing on a daily basis. But coming to this bacteria can make folic acid, because no one will supply folic acid to the bacteria, right? It's very, I should not say in a sarcastic way, but it's very hard to provide a folic acid, and that to a tiny organism as bacteria, right? So that means it is the bacteria, that means within the bacterial system, it is quite capable of making the folic acid. Now let us see that how this folic acid is being made. The folic acid is made starting from what? The pteridine. How this pteridine look like? The pteridine looks like, it's a modified form of purine rather, but ring expansion is there. This is found to be the form of what? Pteridine. And it is this particular form which is found to be involved as one of the starting material in the process of making folic acid, right? Okay. Now, it is the pteridine in its phosphate form. So here it is the place where phosphate group is attached, like CH2 and then diphosphate. Okay, suppose diphosphate is there, right? Okay. So as this is found to be one of the starting material, now let us see what next. With this starting material, what your bacteria will do. It is the bacteria that requires at this particular stage, if the bacteria it wants to proceed to the next step, all it need is PABA. Now we are approaching to our mystery. We are approaching in solving the mystery. We are approaching in solving the puzzle. Why? Because just now we brought PABA, right? Now what is that PABA all about? I think most of you are familiar with PABA, right? PABA is basically para-aminobenzoic acid. Okay. Now here lies the answer. Okay, we are heading towards the answer anyway. So PABA is basically something like this. Para means with respect to a phenyl, this is found to be the para position. That means we have to place something here, right? And the something is nothing but an acid. Okay, so what they observe that it is the structure of PABA that is having a resemblance with the structure of sulfonamide. Okay. Why it is so? And for that we need to bring just beneath to it. So beneath the structure of PABA, here is your sulfonamide. Now let us see with what respect they are found to be similar. Okay. In that process, what they did, they just measured the distance between the hydrogen and the oxygen, and similarly the hydrogen and the oxygen. Not only this, another distance they measured, that is the distance between these two oxygen and the distance between these two oxygen. What they observed that they are almost close. Right? As they are almost close, it is assumed that the activity profile or the functional profile which is being carried by the PABA, the same functional profile is likely to be there in the structure of sulfonamide as well. So with that, they got the clue that probably sulfonamide is acting as an anti-metabolite. Okay. Now, here the question is, it is the pteridine in its diphosphate form can accept PABA, right? It is the pteridine in its diphosphate form accept PABA. Okay. Shall we assume that this is found to be the pteridine part? So at its sixth position, we have a CH2. to that CH2, it is the NH of PABA. It is the NH of PABA that will get attached. And finally, you can find this like this, right? So this is found to be another intermediate. This is found to be the primary intermediate in the production of folic acid. This is called dihydropteroic acid. Hydropteroic acid. The making of dihydropteroic acid as one of the major intermediate involves the influence of what? An enzyme called dihydropteroate synthetase. Dihydropteroate synthetase. So, by mimicking the structural as well as chemical profile of PABA, it is the sulfonamide that is competing with PABA and occupying the substrate binding site of this particular enzyme, thereby producing what? Producing what? It is not PABA linked, rather sulfonamide linked dihydropteroic acid, which is found to be a pseudo substrate for the subsequent event. So that means by combining sulfonamide, by combining itself with pteridine, thereby forming what? Sulfonamide linked dihydropteroic acid, and that is why it can act as a pseudo substrate for the subsequent event, because the moment bacterial system is equipped with what? Is supplied with dihydropteroic acid, subsequent merging with glutamic acid, there is the formation of what? There is the formation of dihydrofolic acid. Okay? So it is the dihydropteroic acid subsequently while combining with glutamic acid resulted in the formation of what? Dihydrofolic acid, which will further undergo reduction in presence of what? In presence of an enzyme called dihydrofolate reductase. Upon reduction, there is a formation of what? THF, that is tetrahydrofolate. It is the tetrahydrofolate that will undergo what? Formylation. Now let us see what are the locations where formylation took place. It is the location called N5. N5, that means assume that this is the position 5 of pteridine, okay, and this is found to be, once we are done with the making of pteridine, it is a portion of pteridine actually, and then we have to go further and we can find it something like here. This is found to be the 10th nitrogen. So formylation took place where? Here. So these are the locations where formylation took place, and it is the formylation which ultimately leads to the merging, the bridging between these two, N5 and N10, and from there one methylenic moiety is shifted, is transferred to the uracil, and thereby there is the formation of what? The essential nitrogenous base, one of the essential nitrogenous base called thymidine. Right? So this is how the process goes on. So sulfonamides especially acting on what? More at the preliminary stage, right? It is acting as a pseudo substrate for what? This PABA, or a pseudo substrate for that enzyme, that is dihydropteroate synthetase. Okay? So that means it prevents the incorporation of PABA into that pteridine, thereby prevents or hinders the formation of what? Dihydropteroic acid. The moment there is a malformation or less formation of dihydropteroic acid, what will happen? The ample production will get stopped, and that means the no longer, and at a particular point of time when the bacteria will totally deprived of what? Totally deprived of one of the nitrogenous base, and thereby it will hamper the production of DNA, right? Once the DNA formation will get inhibited or halted, what will happen? It affects what? The growth and multiplication. So the bacterial growth and multiplication will get hindered out of this process. Growth and multiplication will get hindered, and thereby it can produce what? The bacteriostatic effect. So this is how the sulfonamides, most of the sulfonamides, they are exerting their bacteriostatic effect. we should not forget that we have with us a small number of sulfonamides. They are also acting as a sidal, bactericidal. Okay, but the exact mechanism is found to be is not found to be clear. But bacteriostatic effect, how it is exerting the bacteriostatic effect, it's now pretty clear. Okay, so now let us see that what are we studied in mechanism of action in a nutshell, right? Okay, now let us just provide you the, let me just provide you the gist of the show, right? The gist of the show, it says, it talks about what it is, the PABA, which is as similar as that of what? Sulfonamide. Sulfonamide structurally, and is assumed as they are structurally similar, both electronegative atoms, aromatic rings, all are there. It is assumed that they should react in a similar manner. They should behave in a same way, in a similar manner chemically as well. By virtue of this particular similarity, what happened? The sulfonamides hinders the PABA to be incorporated on the pteridine. Okay, and in the process of preventing the incorporation, it has to occupy where? It has to occupy the substrate binding site of what? Dihydropteroic acid. Pteroic acid. Okay, the moment dihydropteroic acid is found to be malformed, subsequent event give rise to the making of or the generation of what? Pseudo substrate. Pseudo substrate. And it's very tedious. It's quite impossible for a bacteria to deal with the pseudo substrate and make the actual form of nitrogenous base. That is essentially thymidine or some purine as well. Thymidine is an example of pyrimidine, but it do have some influence in making purine as well. So as there is a formation of pseudo substrate, that means it is the subsequently there is no formation of what? Neither DHF, that is dihydrofolic acid, nor THF, nor the N5N10 methylated folic acid. And thereby there is no transfer of what? Methyl. If there is no transfer, that means no longer the bacteria will make what? Thymidine. As a result of it, the bacteria will deprived of what? The raw materials for the production of DNA. That means it affects the DNA formation. If the DNA formation will get affected, what will happen? It will have an impact over the growth and multiplication. And with that, the sulfonamides are exerting its bacteriostatic effect. I think it's clear. Okay, with that, let me just end up today's discussion. If you really like my videos, please don't forget to press the like buttons and please do subscribe so that I can proceed further. Thank you so very much.